Welcome to the Parallel Domain Web Visualizer. This is a new product that we've released to our customers, and I'd like to give you a tour. In front of us, we see the three sensors that compose this dataset. We have the ability to adjust the position of all of these sensors using the number of columns, as well as deleting the sensors or re-adding them in certain columns. We also have the ability to play through these scenes. And so you can see here that the scene has already been preloaded, but you can play through these scenes, pause, advance, or go backwards and forwards frame by frame. We also have the ability to change the frame rate that the scene is playing at. On the left panel, we have the ability to turn on the different layers. And in this case, the different layers are composed of the annotation types and the sensor underneath it. For the RGB and camera sensors, we have all these different annotations. So if we toggle them on or off, we can immediately visualize them. And as you play through the scene, they remain static to the objects that they're supposed to correspond to. Within the annotation types, we have the ability to select the visibility based on the ontology. So we can turn all of them on or off. We can turn off just the cars, or we can turn off all of them except the cars. This ontology selection is currently available for Bounding Box 2D and Bounding Box 3D, and will soon be available for semantic and instant segmentation as well. In addition to camera data, we also have the ability to visualize LiDAR data. So we can actually visualize a point cloud superimposed on the camera image. We also have the ability to visualize the LiDAR point cloud separately on its own. And in this view, we can actually scroll through the scene and watch it play dynamically, as we would expect from a 3D point cloud. So let's turn off the bounding boxes. We can also visualize the annotations for the LiDAR. So here we can see semantic segmentation, which is colored by point instead of by pixel, because this is a LiDAR annotation. And we also have instant segmentation. We also have motion vectors. And again, this is all being loaded dynamically and played live as we speak. So let's turn off LiDAR for a second and kind of explore the Analyze panel, which is on the right side. So the Analyze panel allows us to get a little bit more in depth about what we're seeing, and I'll reduce the number of columns to make the images a little bit bigger. When we turn on something like Bounding Box 2D, we may want to know information about what the bounding box represents or what the metadata of that bounding box is. And that's what the right panel starts to allow us to explore. The metadata panel is related to the scene. And talking about scenes, we actually can scroll through pretty much every single one of the scenes that are available in the dataset. Here we've selected scene 0, but this metadata has to do with the entire scene. And this metadata would change if we move to a different scene. Metadata of the scene generally corresponds to the weather and location and time of day. But we can see here that we've highlighted one of the bounding boxes. And when we highlight a bounding box or an annotation, the mask data panel shows up. And we've actually selected two layers. The first layer is the camera beneath, the camera image beneath. And here we have the location of the camera pixels. And we also have data about the bounding box itself. And you can see we've highlighted this green bounding box, this selected bounding box, and it shows up in all the different frames as the same bounding box. And we can see all the different metadata associated with that bounding box. If we want even more browsability of the bounding boxes, we can go to the bounding boxes panel. And in the bounding boxes panel, we can actually select bounding box on the image, as we can see here, or we can select it by the table, which we can do by clicking the select or deselect button. And you can see the different bounding boxes show up. We can also see a much more detailed view of that same metadata panel we saw earlier, but in an expanded view in case you wanted more inspection capabilities. We have coordinates, which kind of specify the coordinates in terms of our internal representation of where things are located in our maps. We also have ontology, which allows us, which corresponds one-to-one with the ontology that is over here for the bounding boxes. But this also additionally shows you the ID of that ontology, the numerical ID, as well as the color. And so you can see, for example, on the left side, all these like blue and red parking slots. And if you scroll down, you most likely see that there's lane markings, and then there's also parking slots right here. That corresponds to these tiny boxes on the left side. And yeah, that's like a full tour of the data visualizer, and we hope that it's something that's useful for you.